Let's start the interview as quick as possible so we can really get to the meat. Tommy, explain to people, we're going to go deeper afterwards, but what does your company do?
Okay, so Extreme Push is a multi-channel engagement platform. We've been around about 5 years. What we do in a nutshell is we help banks and other vertical industries, but we help them understand their customers across all the digital channels and then automate personalized messages across all the different digital channels. So it could be push notifications, in-app messaging, SMS, email, social channels, whatever the relevant channels are of engagement. We've been doing about 5 years, just under 70 staff now, scaling at a pretty rapid rate, probably do double staff in the next 12 months.
How many people do you guys have now?
It's just under 70.
And growing?
And growing at a pretty rapid rate internationally. So we're in 6 countries now.
But you started not in banking, I guess.
No, we didn't. We started actually in sports betting and gaming, and sports as well, which is pretty relevant actually. There's a great comparison between banking and sports betting and gaming. So before you think I'm totally insane, if you think about...
Can you hear us well, by the way?
Can you hear us?
All right, sorry.
So if you think about the two industries and the comparisons, if you look at sports betting and gaming, you can see that basically they're big B2C market. They actually have similar products if you think about it. So they have odds-based products, some outliers, but across the region it's usually similar. All right, you've got your specialists and etc. And then in banking, be it challenger or traditional, you have similar types of products, again, outliers, specialists, but they're similar. And then you've got a backdrop of kind of regulation and compliance, which is a challenge on both sides. Like there's massive fines going on in sports betting and gaming, and obviously the banking backdrop in regulation is quite tough.
You told me before, because we had this discussion a little bit before, because that's what we usually do. I like to talk to guys before so we can just continue the conversation as if, before it starts. I've heard you told me you already have big bank clients. What kind of value do you bring them, the ones you already have, without giving the names away? But
okay. So we're working with about 30 financial services companies around the world.
Already?
Yeah. And again, actually, you can go back to similar type of use case. We'll talk about the technology in a minute, but it's the use cases that drive the value. So, what the typical type of use cases that we bring to banking is retail banking specifically is around kind of onboarding use cases, educational, and then cross-sell, upsell, reducing costs. So it's kind of 3 buckets: customer experience, which we lean very heavily into, cost reduction, cost efficiencies, automation, etc. And then lastly, it's like everyone want to get to the sales side all the time. It's kind of cross-sell, upsell, but service, marketing, and cross-sell, upsell.
I mean, I'm not the specialist on the other side. I'm more in fintech, but don't you think, I'm just asking, that most banks believe they do this already well? I mean, but the fact that you're winning such customers shows that some of them, and probably more in the future, believe that you bring value they can't do, because they have data, they have data scientists, they have, a lot of people, but what makes your offering so compelling to them? What do you think it makes a compelling offering?
I think it's a number of things. You have to step back and see what's driving, what are the driving forces. So if you look at its customer experience is one of the drivers. So that the whole change in banking, we actually had it in the debate, the technological change, the headaches, etc. But actually it's driven, 2 of the ladies pointed out, it's driven by, the consumer trends, all right, over the last 10 years. It's driven by trust or lack of, as in the millennials, the Gen Y, the Gen Z, they're as loyal as not a dog. They are as loyal as you keep them. And if you're not, you know, we have this terminology in our business where you have to show them you know them on an ongoing basis. And that comes down to plugging in platforms like ourselves, which can kind of understand the data, all right, from the different, if you take a traditional bank, a lot of different silos, different providers. So we can plug in a very rapid rate and then take the actionable data and we think about things in data decisioning and then execution. So, we can understand that data, give a single customer view, and then make decisions around automation. So one of the speakers, I think it was yourself there earlier, you talk about automations. So when we go into banks, and not just banks, but we talk about, well, what are the baseline use cases you need to get up and running and automate? So as you can actually use your kind of resources, all right, in a much cleverer fashion. So you can use them to dream up the next big kind of high value use case. So typically, they're the three buckets that we kind of put our use cases out in. And why are we better? It's because we do it all in a single platform. So there's an awful lot of kind of point solutions across traditional banking. And we just plug in 8 weeks and we start to garner the data and give you a better view of your customer and then start running these use cases based on what are the specific ones for your bank.
I asked you during our previous interview when we talked outside that you must have competitors.
Yep.
Like the IBMs, Adobe, etc.
Yep.
And to probably say the same thing.
Yep.
Or not the same thing, but I mean basically they try to get that customer segment. What differentiates you? I mean, without talking badly about IBM, because they deploy me as well. But no, not at all. But just say, what do you think makes your smaller firm able to compete against these tech giants?
Okay, I suppose a number of things. I think agility. So we have proven our platform in the market across a number of different territories in banking and other verticals. We can time to value. We talk about time to value. So we're not one of these firms. We lean in as heavily as you can in early life training and all that stuff, and we can lean in from a managed service perspective. But actually, what we're finding is traditional banks, all right, small, medium, and large, are now going, actually, I don't want a 12-month project. I don't want an 18-month project. Can you show me some low-hanging use cases with your platform, all right? Show me your North Star, all right? And then show me what you can do in a 16-week pilot that rolls into a 2 or 3 year contract.
You have a specific use case of a retail bank or a big bank that implemented something?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Don't mention the name.
So they are quite similar use cases. So if you look at what everyone, the traditional banks are trying to emulate, is what is a good customer experience, and customer experience is getting a customer onboarded or getting them through the login in a very seamless and quick fashion. So you don't have to go out to the call center. So you don't have to, send letters even still, all right? So it's identifying those journeys with the customer and saying, okay, this is already digitized, all right? We can put our pieces of software both on the web and within the app, and we can start to identify this cross channels, right? And then, for example, on onboarding, really, really important use case where up to 20% of customers who download a banking app for the first time but are banking with the bank from a retail perspective haven't got through the login gate in a month. Like that's just can't happen. In any other industry, you'd go bust. So we're helping reduce that down to kind of single digits. So over a 3-month period, you can bring you identify the journey, you identify where the drop-offs, okay? If they are doing, still sending pins out and folios out in the post, well, we can help some of it, but we can't help all of it. But there is that actual journey has to be digitized. And once then we can identify and seamlessly bring them back in. Another one is a really good one actually, and very high value. So that's a very high value. Another high value is with the tier 1 bank, we put identifiers on the loan application journey, all right? And we were able to identify where the drop-offs were. We were then able to gracefully bring them back, right? But we didn't actually bring them back into the app or on the web. We checked it with the core banking solution, all right, a checkup, all right, and then pushed it out to the contact center where they were making calls to finish the loan application and
knowing where the issue was.
Knowing where they were, but knowing where they were, picking it up, all right, and giving them a good customer experience, but actually checking with the core banking, because there's no point in either messaging or contacting that person if they have no propensity to borrow. So it's those kind of checks that you have to do as well.
How much, I mean, you said 8 weeks implemented. How much work does it take for them? Because money is one thing, but how many resources do they need from their side afterwards?
Well, it's a good question. There's a lot of different answers to this, but if you take there's two typical scenarios. You've got a bank that is self-sufficient, technology capable, so they have an in-house team. That's always much faster. And then you have banks who have outsourced teams, and we always kind of sit down with the kind of leader or the exec who has kind of gone, yeah, no, we want this in here. It's very important that all the service providers are aligned from day one. It's not actually, it's not about the money sponsorship. It's actually about the leadership. No, guys, this is the journey. This is what we want to get done. And what we find is once that's aligned early on, then it becomes a very, very fast. Everyone's playing ball, basically, So even the service provider that you might have to work with knows what the objective is and can get it moving.
You came from gaming or gambling, from an industry with other key industries we know are very tech caffeine, like we're all adults here. Sex industry, porn industry.
We're not in the sex industry.
No, I know,
but
so
we're clear.
No, but nevertheless, we're all adults.
But it's a technology proficient.
No, I mean, I think the sex industry, gaming, those are very open to technology because they don't have those moral issues. They just want things done in terms of payment or keeping customers, getting customers. So what do you think, coming from the industry of gaming, which is cutting edge, what do you think banks, the financial industry, can draw from? Is there some things you brought to the banking industry, to your clients, who could say, look, in gaming, that's how they did it, and successfully? Is it things this industry here can learn from these other industries?
Yeah,
inspired?
Absolutely. Look, again, if you think about the journeys that are involved in sports betting and gaming, it's bringing, it's acquire, so bringing them through the registration or getting them registered. It's putting a deposit on. It's stimulation of bets, but relevant bets, not kind of spam or spray and pray. It's all around personalization. But I think the key thing is around customer experience. If you look at the backdrop to it, and even again, I go back to the debate earlier, which was really interesting, is it comes down to, what's driving here. And, banks, traditional banks, they have massive transformational projects on the back end, and some of them have massive transformational projects on the front end. And it's getting a balance between that, because actually the customer doesn't see any of the back end stuff. So these large transformational, they have to be done, absolutely, make no mistake, but it's getting the balance between the front and the back, because the customer just doesn't see it. And if they're not getting serviced in the right way, all right, or getting the experience they want, all right, and these are simple features and functionalities that are just not coming on stream quick enough, they will go to the challenger banks. And the problem with that is that when they go to the challenger bank, it's not the customers that they're just getting. So, big talk about,
we
for or against.
Banks.
But it's a really important
people,
point.
Actually.
But actually customer experience, because they're not just winning the customers. So I'm going to steal your secret here, right? It's the data. So, my CTO and co-founder told a story in one of these about a year ago about he's a Revolut customer now, and his bank, basically his traditional bank, where his wages and salaries goes in and his mortgage comes out, all right, he starts putting his salary across on the day after he gets it, and leaves enough in for the mortgage. And then he goes in one time and he keeps getting emailed from the incumbent bank or the primary bank around a mortgage offer. And it's insane, a year and a half afterwards, right? And then secondly, he goes in 3 or 4 months later after he moves, kind of his discretionary spend, and basically sees no transactions. And that is, that's a wake-up call, because that is the show me you know me moment. And it's the challenger neobanks who are leading, and excuse me, like I just have a view on this, but they're leading with experience. If you look at Revolut in the last week, they have 10 million customers, all right? I'm not a shareholder, I have nothing to do with them, but they're leading with customer experience, but they will leverage off banking license, they will get the banking license, then they will start doing personal loans, then they'll start doing credit cards, and they'll move up the value chain, all right?
I remember, as I said, I'm from fintech space. When N26 started, people were laughing about it because basically the basic account they had, any bank didn't even pay attention to it. But things evolve, and it's better to have few products, few solutions, but good ones, because basically you build on it. And what you said before, it was curious, was like when you send messages to your customers in gaming, it has to be relevant, because otherwise it's just noise. And where is the future going? Because I would like you guys and ladies and gentlemen to ask some questions, hopefully. Where do you think, where is the next cool thing where you guys heading to, besides of what we heard now?
Well, okay,
like to talk
I think it's moving towards less platforms, all right, solutions. So I'm not going to say one platform, but less platforms. So you're not going to have, there's many service providers in banks, but in customer experience, in engagement, et cetera, in advertising, you're going to have few platforms, okay, who can do 80% of the use cases, all right, and the 20% either won't be done or they will bring in specialists for that, but it'll be very much on a specialist basis. That kind of, that's self-prophesizing for ourselves, because that's where we're going and that's what we do. But we also think, obviously, machine learning, a lot of talk about it earlier as well. A lot of talk, a lot of real, it's only starting. Practical use cases are now starting to come out and actually have a value. So I think machine learning is going to get better and better, co-piloting, piloting, or augmenting what's going on from a resource perspective. And I think GDPR is driving from a risk perspective.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point you mentioned now. Different laws and regulation for GAM, in the States, and different laws and regulations in banking in Europe. How do you adapt to this?
Well, I think sorry. So the GDPR, and then there's the California one, and they're all following suit, and it's all similar but a little different flavor. So it's I think privacy and security. We were here earlier, but that's going to become huge. People are becoming more and more, millennials included, Gen Z. If you're giving them a kind of, if you're, what's the word, a value exchange, then it's different. But I think they're becoming big. But I think really GDPR is brilliant for us, because it's a risk to have your data in about 5 different silos from a messaging perspective. So we can create that actionable data hub and then message from there.
Maybe a silly question again. How do you make sure that the information you get from the bank's customers, do they stay with the bank?
Oh yeah, we don't own the data. It's
at no point.
At 0 point. No, it's the bank's data.
Yeah.
It's the bank's data, even the behavioral data, the clickstream data. It's all the bank's data. Basically, we do it on their behalf. We have a platform. It's that they use and license.
Okay, so let's ask some questions. Who would like to ask a question? Thank you.
Thank you. As part of your platform, you talk about personalization. What capabilities do you provide, or is it just more of a channel for push messaging and stuff like that?
So we do the ID, all right, and then we have the channels. So there's one other piece of the puzzle around experience, so changing the actual pages. all right? We don't currently do that. That would be a channel, but that's we do everything else. So all the channel personalizations we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it would be good to get a bit more clarity about, what actually you provide.
Yeah.
Because, in what you say, there is the bit of, getting the data about the customer, about what it's doing at the moment, about its profile, processing it, and then returning some signal, some push message or whatever. So how much of that is done by you? And how do you deal with the multiple integration points? Because the 8 weeks or whatever you said, I mean, it does not include the integration.
Well, it does from a web and an app perspective, including email, all right? Then it comes down to the different customized parts of what you want to do. But from an API perspective, we take in the data. We can be PII agnostic, so to speak. We don't use it, so we match IDs from a hashed IDs, be it sub or whatever. And that's how we personalize it. So we get the personalization from be it the warehouse or the system of record, for want of a better word. And then we pull it in at scale. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so the key strength of yours is the smart use cases, is the better business logic, or where's the key strength?
I don't think it's one. I think it's amalgamating. So we're of the belief that you have to keep your data, your decisioning, and your execution quite close. So if you look at some of the really cool but pretty standard use cases, so the transactional stuff, so you plug in a scooter, you've tapped your card, or your phone, you've taken out a scooter, you now go off and you come back and you plug it in. You get a message as you plug it in. So real time or nearest to real time. That's an excellent customer experience, purely service customer experience, a customer messaging. But the difference in sending it or sending it 5 minutes later, all right, is the difference on having a really good customer experience or totally losing the customer. And that's why we think about things around the data, all right, or as much data as you can. There's sometimes, we're not going to go into the core, we plug into the core systems, but we don't take any of the core actual PII data, we match it with hashed IDs. So we can also, from a mortgage propensity, from loan propensity, we can also check that before we go back to the customers. Does that make sense? Yeah.
If I think about gaming, which you have 5 of the biggest customers in the world, I mean, we all gambled in our lives, I hope. And there's always in gambling, it's an urgency because, you don't want to lose money, you don't want to lose opportunity. In bank, you don't have such an urgency unless you speculate in the stock market, which is also good, But so therefore, to be so quick, relevant, it's much more important in gaming than in banking, unless it's in stock market.
It is absolutely, yeah. But there are service messaging, as I just showed, that the difference, a triggered message in sports betting and gaming, where halftime of a match, Live Score is one of our customers, the largest sports publishing company in the world. Probably none of you have ever heard of it, but any goal alert you get is coming from that platform. All right, yes. Basically, it has 200 million unique web users and 50 million monthly active users.
And they
like
use
it's bananas.
Company.
Yeah, they use us. Yeah, across the entire multi-channel. All right, and they're so companies, be them banks or large enterprises, be them sports betting and gaming publishers, e-commerce, etc. They're actually trying to simplify things. All right, for the reasons of GDPR, but also one throat to choke. Very crude way of saying it, but they don't want 5 or 6 different suppliers doing this, just bits and pieces of it. Okay, and then the resourcing cost as well is huge. And then if you have 3 or 4 or 5 different providers, you have the same old issue that we have as a traditional banking right now is more silos. So we're trying to smash down those silos.
And think of that banking has an image of being slow. No insult. I think anything that brings fast, relevant information, which is personalized, helps to change the image.
Well, card-linked offers. Sorry to cut across you, but that's a real time, or near real time. When you're in a supermarket, okay, you want to be getting a push notifications when you're in it, not when you're gone and you've checked out of the pods.
You know, when you ask millennials, I think it's number 26 again, but it just happens to be, you know, at one point you were able to change your credit card PIN on your app, and it seems so fucking simple. But people liked it. The fact that this kind of experience, they don't have to call in or have
Or
to
pause it.
or send a request, getting a letter to change your PIN or whatever. It's just so convenient. And convenience is the key, and personalization is key. And I tell you, you know, anything that changes that image with our industry to the positive, it's a winning proposition. And I'm not involved at all in this, but I just, you know, just for the sake of it. Who has another question? So far we had some good questions. One more question? Oh. No, we have one here. Be kind.
Yes. Cloud and private or...
So I just have a question around infrastructure. So you say, like you said, running multiple systems across multiple silos is going to be difficult. How do you integrate? We spoke a bit earlier about legacy tech. How do you integrate across multiple transactors, multiple different code bases to make sure that you can get that personalization?
So usually via some sort of, it depends on the type of systems we're dealing with, but some are real-time or kind of web bus or kind of event bus type driven, or others are API driven. So it's usually an integration in API. Like usually an API, you know, and again, I'm generalizing here, but it isn't as complicated as is always seems, okay? So if you've got a clear purpose and you know what you're trying to achieve, there's a few endpoints, there's a few connectors, and that can be done relatively easily. Sorry, can you do all of your API integrations in 8 weeks? No, but can you get the main 2 or 3 that can give you the base and foundation of how you personalize and message, be it real time or be it segmentation or scheduling, et cetera, you know? So you can do all of that. And then from an infrastructure perspective, you asked the infrastructure, yeah, so we can do both private cloud or on-prem, and we've done both for banks, tier 1 banks, and also challenger banks. Then secondly, we've also done a migration from cloud. So think about this for a second. We've done a migration from private cloud because the bank thought the results were pretty good, so they wanted to get it on-prem because they could go deeper and deeper. So we've done that as well with no downtime in between, and that's in writing.
All right, I think we have to finish.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spiros.
There's an opportunity anyway to talk to you during these 2 days. And again, thanks for listening.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please just shout, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye. Yeah, bye-bye.